What's a movie you love that is unpopular or unknown by most people? I really like Mary and Max. Most people don't know of it. I've only seen it comes up once in a sad movie AskReddit post. Animation was great and the story had me crying at the end like a baby. It's one of the most depressing movies that doesn't make you depressed. It was a happy cry for sure, but it's so sad. Defiance, an amazing true story with photos during the credits of the real people. It takes place deep in the woods of WW2 Poland, a massive colony of Jewish people who defied the Nazis and fought alongside the Russians, and they survived the entire war there in the woods until it was over. Obviously some of them died because they were fighting too, some of which moving to the United States after. Covered in the credits. So amazing. The start of the movie can be a little slow, but it was very good. UK survivalist Ray Mears did an episode on the Bielski partisans on one of his programs. I tried to find it on YouTube for you but couldn't. It was really great. He talked about the Bielski brothers and how they had the skills to thrive in the wilderness, where most people couldn't even survive, and showed a couple of tricks. One was using a large tarpaulin to harvest ant eggs. You place the tarpaulin next to the nest and quickly throw all the nest onto the whole tarpaulin. Clear one side, then fold it down to provide a bit of shade from the sun. The ants take all the eggs to the shaded part, and then you replace the nest and you take some of those eggs, never more than 10%, which means you can harvest the same nest a few times a year. You can fry them. He also had one of the survivors make him shoes like they used to do, out of tree bark. He said they were the most comfortable shoes he had ever had. Apparently the Bielskis would take anyone in and look after them, give them work to do. However old or young or ill-adapted they were, they never turned people away. And he talked a bit about their military successes, how they caused the Germans to detach an entire tank regiment to come after them because of their sabotage activities, and they just withdrew to the swamps and the Nazis couldn't find them. At the end of the program he had brought together all the survivors, most of whom hadn't seen each other since the war. After the war everyone just got on with things they best they could. Everyone had a shit war. There was no recognition for what they had done, so it was amazing to see all these people gathered round the fire and chatting to each other for the first time in half a century. Better Off Dead, an 80s teen comedy starring John Cusack in which he repeatedly tries to commit suicide, humorously, has cartoon, claymation animated hallucinations set to Van Halen, has to win a ski competition to woo his ex, and is relentlessly stalked by a young paperboy over $2. It's incredibly goofy and one of my favorite 80s movies of all time. Edit, and there is also a pop-punk band named after the protagonist that has clips from the movie in most of their songs. Benny and June, it's my favorite movie. It's got a very young Johnny Depp as the lead role. He falls in love with a mentally ill girl named June who is taken care of by her older brother Benny. He bends over backwards for her and makes her laugh with his silly antics. He plays kind of a young Charlie Chaplin role. Great movie, and there are a few memorable scenes. One that blew me away was Antonio's character, who is smart but can't speak the language of the other 12, from memory. The Vikings are not translated. As somebody watching the movie you are like the 13th and not understanding what they are saying. He tags along on a longish journey just listening to the others chat, swear and abuse him. Then he suddenly swears back as he has figured out enough of the language. At that point all the characters speak the same language. I can't think of another movie that dealt with characters not understanding other characters' language like this. Six String Samurai, basically a post-apocalyptic flick where the bombs went off in the 50s and Buddy Holly had to pick up his sword and go roaming samurai in the wasteland. Edit, got curious if I could find it because it's been a few years and apparently it's on YouTube if anyone wants to check it out. The Quick and the Dead is without doubt the most underrated action movie of the 90s. Think Enter the Dragon or Bloodsport, but replace martial arts with the Quick Draw tournament in the Old West. starring the likes of Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe before they were famous, and directed by Sam Raimi, with all his directing style trademarks in full glory. It's a highly entertaining movie. Half of this thread is just people naming movies that a lot of people like, so I'm going to name one that I know is actually unpopular, and that is Year One with Jack Black and Michael Cera. It has a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes and was a complete bust, but there's so much in it I love. Like Paul Rudd and David Cross as Cain and Abel, Olivia Wilde looking fine as hell, Christopher Mintz-Plasse almost getting his foreskin chopped off. Rip Harold Ramis, I'm sure he wishes he'd made a better movie before he died. Unpopular, 13 Ghosts. I think it's awesome, but when it came out everyone told me to wait until it was released on VHS, DVD because it wasn't worth paying to see in the theater. Unknown Dolly Deadly, for horror fans, it's a trauma film and it's utterly fantastic. The directing is unusual in the best way. It hooked me immediately and absolutely. If this is unknown enough, but Dogma by Kevin Smith is a masterpiece. It has some pretty scathing critiques of the Catholic Church and religion as a whole, and they put huge pressure on the entertainment industry to not show this movie. It's not on any streaming services. The only place you can find the movie a pirated version on YouTube. One of Kevin Smith's greatest movies. I'm with a superstar cast, but every time I bring it up people look at me like I have 3 eyes. Had to put on a second entry. Lucky number 11. No idea how to describe it. It's not really a mob movie, although the main character is mixed up 2 mob bosses, a hitman, dirty NYC cops, and a horse race 20 years before that got an entire family wiped out. But it's a solid WTF is going on here, with an all-star cast: Josh Hartnett, Sir Ben Kingsley, Morgan Freeman, Bruce Willis, Stanley Tucci, Lucy Liu. Also Mr. Megarium's Wonder Emporium is sweet. The Brothers Bloom is odd, but worth watching, and Across the Universe is one of the best musicals ever. Vegetals, The Pirates Who Don't Do Anything, for a kids movie. It has a pretty great storyline, some decent action and dark undertones that outdoes 99C/show of movies of the same target audience, and an absolute slammer of a parody of Rock Lobster by the B-52s, called Rock Monster, that honestly does it better than the original. My name is John Crichton, an astronaut shot through a wormhole in some distant part of the galaxy, trying to stay alive on this living ship of escaped prisoners. My friends, if you can hear me, beware. If I make it back, if I open the door, Earth is unprepared, helpless, against the nightmares I've seen. Or should I stay and protect my home, not show them you exist? But then you'll never know the wonders I've seen. Seriously, one of the greatest sci-fi shows of all time. It is criminally underappreciated in wider pop culture. Its fan base was pretty dedicated in its day, but it never really broke out into the big time. 4 seasons and a 2-part miniseries to wrap up the hanging story threads. A bit sloppily but still satisfying, and not bad considering they did in 3 hours what had been planned as full season or seasons. I believe it is currently streaming on Amazon, at least in the US. If you like sci-fi and don't mind a little weirdness, do yourself a favor and check it out. Oliver and Company, 1988. It's essentially Disney's own take on the classic Oliver Twist story. It was a movie I watched avidly on VHS when I was young, and it still sticks with me. I personally believe it was the start of the Disney Renaissance. Unfortunately, it came out on the same weekend as the original The Land Before Time, which was a huge nail in its coffin. It was re-released later, but still didn't find much success. It's not the most well-known Disney movie, but it's one of my favorites. I love the characters, story, and songs. Always will. Roadie, 1980. Movie follows the main character, Travis W. Redfish, played by Meat Loaf, as he attempts to help a virginal mildly psychic groupie to fulfill her dream of fucking Alice Cooper. She's been saving herself for him since Alice Cooper, famously, only fucks virgins. It's as ridiculous as it sounds and I love it. The Ref, Denis Leary, Kevin Spacey, Judy Davis, with fantastic small roles from Christine Baranski, J.K. Simmons, Glynis Johnson, B.D. Wong and more. It was a 1994 soapy Denis Leary comedy. He's a cat burglar in a small New England town on Christmas Eve and kidnaps a married couple, Kevin Spacey and Judy Davis, who are going through marriage counseling. I cannot recommend it enough. Quotable, funny, and charming, while completely predictable. You will be laughing and quoting it for years. Des Leben der anderen, The Lives of Others. It's an absolutely incredible German movie about a Stasi officer in East Germany in the 80s who grows disillusioned with his work and his leaders as he starts to empathize with the people he's been assigned to monitor. The man who played the main character gave one of the best performances I've ever seen, but sadly died from cancer before he could collect any of the many awards the movie won him. The only reason it's relatively unknown is because it's not in English, and most folks aren't down to watch 2 hours of subtitles. He had Sucker Proxy with Tim Robbins starring as an idiot hired by Paul Newman, a CEO who's trying to profit by devaluing the stock of his company. It's a quirky, charming Coen Brothers film that got lost in the shuffle of all the great movies released that same year, 1994. Again, I get some hate for this, but I really like Adam Sandler's paid vacation rom-coms. Just go with it, blended. Even the first Grown-Ups, they're stupid and goofy and have almost no artistic merit, but I find them entertaining in a restful way that deep, thoughtful, socially aware pieces aren't. In a similar vein, The Other Woman, comedy gold, and my wife and I watch it every time we trip over it on regular cable TV. TNT's 1990 adaptation of Treasure Island, honestly, excellent adaptation from the book, well acted and beautifully shot. Check out this cast list: Christian Bale as Jim Hawkins, Charlton Heston as Long John Silver, Christopher Lee as Blind Pew, Oliver Reed as Billy Bones, Pete Postlethwaite as George Merry, and more, plus a brilliant soundtrack by the Chieftains. I adore The Count of Monte Cristo with Jim Caviezel. It's on my list of movies I watch when I need some comfort food or to kill a couple of hours on a Saturday afternoon. Sort of on par with The Shawshank Redemption. I have no idea why it's not more popular than it is. Murder, revenge, mystery, intrigue, love, hidden treasure. Louise Guzman was a freaking treasure, James Crane was punchable, and it was one of Henry Cavill's first movies. Not super deep or life-altering by any means, and nothing like the book, but let's be honest, how many people have actually read the book? So don't get me wrong, I don't think it missed out on an Oscar nod. I just can't understand why so few people seem to know about it at all. Weekend at Bernie's was awesome. The premise is just silly but it's so entertaining. Also Bernard and the Genie was awesome. It has Lenny Henry, Rowan Atkinson and Alan Cumming in it. It's one of Richard Curtis' first decent films. Very funny. You Don't Mess with the Zoan. It's played by Adam Sandler and it's about a highly trained military man that wants to quit the army to become a hairstylist in New York. It's really funny and 100% won't be a disappointment. It's on Netflix. The Fall. Absolutely stunning cinematography and all landscapes were filmed at those places. Took 3 years to film if I recall correctly. Is about a 1920s stuntman who suffered an injury and befriends the most adorable 5-year-old girl ever and weaves her an amazing story. Don't want to say more, because this movie is genuinely a wonderful experience going in as blind as possible. Hands down, is my favorite movie. Midnight Madness, Circa 1980, a genius student hosts the great all-nighter scavenger hunt involving 5 teams who try to solve clues to win the game. Campy hilarity ensues. Michael J. Fox's first film and also features the great Stephen First. Must watch with alcohol because ... campy. Look between the 2 giant melons. Okay, 2 wildly different answers. The Nines. 2007, objectively maybe not the greatest movie, but I felt it was very unique for its time. Quirky genre-shifting philosophical light thriller is the best I could possibly sum it up. Fairly large mainstream stars making such a weird and fun movie just hit right for me at the time. Fired Up. 2009. Everyone has that objectively dumb teen comedy movie they secretly love, but Fired Up never seems to be on those lists. It breaks no new ground, but the movie just comes across as pure joy to me. I can't imagine someone watching it and not smiling basically the whole way through. The Long Kiss Goodnight, one of my favorite Christmas movies and a very underrated spy action movie, also contains one of my favorite lines ever. Geena Davis' character, "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Samuel Jackson's character, "I hope not, I'm thinking about how much my balls hurt." Stardust, to win the heart of his beloved, Sienna Miller, a young man named Tristan, Charlie Cox, ventures into the realm of fairies to retrieve a fallen star. What Tristan finds, however, is not a chunk of space rock, but a woman, Claire Danes, named Vane. Vane is in great danger, for the king's sons need her powers to secure the throne, and an evil witch, Michelle Pfeiffer, wants to use her to achieve eternal youth and beauty. So, I don't really do slasher movies, or horror in general, but I digress. They pair poorly with my squeamish nature and just generally leave me feeling more put off than anything else. However, I also seriously and unironically adore Rubber, and it doesn't get as much love as I'd like it to. Robert is Bassett's slasher villain. Should totally be added to Dead by Daylight. Speed Racer by the Wachowskis. This movie was savaged by reviewers at the time. It has a 40% critic rating at Rotten Tomato. I'll preface this by saying that as a kid, I absolutely loathed the cartoon. I only watched it in the 1st grade, and only then because back in the 70s we had like 6 channels and no remote control. Every show event A would happen, and then the narrator would go over the event just in case ... we missed it like 45 seconds ago? How many times is the narrator going to tell me that Racer X is secretly Speed's brother? 15 fucking times in 22 minutes, that's how many times. Anyway, I was not a fan. So in some respects I didn't have any expectations ... or if I did they were bad ones. But here's the thing, this movie is a live-action cartoon, visually and tonally. I appreciated the beauty of the film and what the Wachowskis tried to accomplish with this film. Was the story really flimsy? Yes, but who in their right mind would go to a Speed Racer film expecting that trash show to somehow produce an in-depth story? I was ready to hate this film, but I actually think it's great. It did help that I saw it in the theater, which makes the crazy colors and surreal racetracks really pop. Airborne, California surfer kid has to move in with his cousin in Cincinnati where everyone plays hockey, so obviously he saves the day when the public school kids need a rollerblader for their race against the prep school kids to settle the score. Starring a complete no-name, co-starring, I shit you not, Seth Green and Jack Black. Overboard, 1987, Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell. It's got a bunch of great little one-liners and I just always kinda like it because I think it does remind me a bit of my own life in a way. My parents look a bit like both of them. My dad actually still wears his hair long and mom is a bleach blonde herself. The characters are so much like my parents as well. My mom came from a wealthy family, her grandfather is one of the founders of Bell Telephone and my father is the son of Italian immigrants and worked as a carpenter out of HS. So I think I just always had this kind of connection to the movie even though it's a bit silly and very funny and more of an inside joke sort of way. I personally don't know many people who've seen it or have heard of it. Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. I love the movie because of the amount of different Transformers in it, along with Devastator and also everything taking place in Egypt, where sand and desert was the landscape for most of the movie really appeals to me for some reason. Also, Demolisher, the excavator transformer, wreaking havoc through Shanghai is also really cool. Predators, 2010, best damn thing that has been done with the Predator since the original in the 80s. It has everything you could want from a Predator flick, Adrian Brody falling out of the sky, a big Russian guy with a minigun, a Yakuza dueling a Predator with a katana, Danny Trejo playing Danny Trejo, death traps, alien dogs, the best Tammy Lawrence Fishburne performance I've ever seen. But it's basically forgotten because it's a dumb action horror flick in the spirit of the original.